It is now my honor and privilege to introduce the recipient of this year's Dwight D. Eisenhower Award, the Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, Marine Corps General Joseph F. Dunford, Jr. The General hails from Boston. He was commissioned in 1977 and has faithfully served as an infantry officer and commanded Marines at all levels. Prior to becoming chairman in October 1, 2015, he was the 36th Commandant of the Marine Corps. As chairman, he is by law our nation's highest-ranking military officer, but he is prohibited, again by law, from having operational command of more than 2 million active duty, Guard, Reserve, service members. He does, however, serve as the principal military advisor to the President, the Defense Secretary, and the National Security and Homeland Security Councils. The chairman inherited a military that is still at war on multiple fronts, not the least of which he is having to fight budget battles at home, namely sequestration and Congress's inability to pass an on-time defense budget. He has also had to adjust to socialite changes in America where less than 1% of the total population currently serves and where less than 7% of Americans have ever worn the uniform. Meanwhile, more than 70% of draft-age men are unfit to even wear it due to aptitude, health, and physical fitness reasons, as well as police records. On Monday, September 10, 2001, no one, to include then Colonel Dunford, could have imagined our nation's capable of fighting a multi-front war for almost 17 years with an all-volunteer force. That we have, that many of you have, and done so magnificently, is a testament to the patriotism of all who volunteered to voluntarily raise their right hand when the great majority of Americans did not. The Dwight D. Eisenhower Award is named after our 34th president, who, along with 7 other United States presidents, proudly called themselves members of the Veterans of Foreign Wars of the United States. This award has been presented annually since 1970 to one individual for his or her contributions to American security, unity, and world peace. It recognizes extraordinary contributions and achievements to secure the nation from foreign threats, to advance the interests of the nation abroad, and to inspire the American public to support these efforts. Comrades, auxiliary members, and distinguished guests, please welcome the recipient of this year's Eisenhower Award, the Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, General Joe Dunford.
Dwight D. Eisenhower Distinguished Service Award, Gold Medal and Citation awarded to General Joseph F. Dunford, Jr., United States Marine Corps, in special recognition and sincere appreciation of more than 4 decades of faithful and exceptional service to America. From platoon, battalion, regimental, and Marine Expeditionary Force Commander to the Commandant of the Marine Corps, and now Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. His dedication to mission, from leading Marines and joint forces in combat to ensuring their families were properly cared for at home, is true to the ideals and the tradition and values of the Veterans of Foreign Wars of the United States, in witness whereof we have hereunto set our hands and the official seal of the Veterans of Foreign Wars of the United States, this 23rd day of July 2018, approved by the National Council of Administration, signed by Keith E. Harmon, Commander-in-Chief, and Brian Duffy, Adjutant General.
Hey, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. And Commander-in-Chief Harmon, thank you so much for the introduction and more importantly for your leadership over the past year. And I also want to recognize, I'm sure once again, one of Kansas City's native sons, Medal of Honor recipient Doc Ballard, my good friend over there. We meet at least once a year in Boston. It's good to see you, Doc. Thanks for all you have done in your 35 years of service as well as your distinguished actions in Vietnam. It's also an honor to share the stage this morning with the other award recipients. Dr. Van Halen and Mr. Goggins have made significant contributions to our veterans community. And I can tell you from personal observation that Command Sergeant Major Thetford is the real deal. He's the absolute epitome of our senior enlisted leadership. And to all the veterans of foreign wars, the auxiliary around the world, and those still in uniform, thanks for what you do for our veterans, for our service members and their families. Each of the veterans here today represents the individuals who have had an impact on me along the way. I had 7 uncles that served in World War II. And in 1950, my dad fought in Korea with the 1st Marine Division. He remains a proud member of the VFW today. I grew up admiring what they did in uniform and what they did in their communities when they came home. And they inspired me to serve. Those of you who served in the Vietnam generation were the big kids on the block when I was growing up. And when I came on active duty in 1977, you taught me what it meant to be a leader. You were my instructors at Officer Candidate School. You were my platoon sergeants when I was a platoon commander, and you've been my mentors throughout my career. And to those who served during the Cold War and during our most recent conflicts, I have served alongside you. And I've remained in uniform for over 4 decades because of that privilege. Like your predecessors, you've carried the colors high on your watch. Ladies and gentlemen, you'd expect me to say it, but I'm truly humbled and honored to join you here today at your national convention. It's also a distinct privilege to accept the Eisenhower Award on behalf of the men and women in uniform today. President Eisenhower's wisdom and his vision carved the path that the United States has followed for 70 years. And his legacy of service is an example that guides me today. Eisenhower actually wrote one of my favorite lines. When he was reflecting on his time in uniform, he said, "The old tactical textbooks say that the commander always visits his troops to inspire them to fight." But Eisenhower observed, "I soon discovered that one of the reasons for my visiting the front lines was to get inspiration from the young American soldier. I went back to my job ashamed of my own occasional resentments or discouragements." Now, I don't claim to have too much in common with the great Dwight Eisenhower, but in my current assignment, I know exactly what he meant. I say that because I have the honor of representing the more than 2 million men and women who serve today. And over the past 3 years, I've had the opportunity to visit with many members of the Joint Force and their families. And needless to say, it's the most rewarding part of my assignment. In my travels, I've met soldiers like Sergeant First Class Ivan Marrera. He's a medic with the 7th Special Forces Group. Sergeant Marrera lost his left hand in combat in Afghanistan and spent 2 years fighting to return to active duty. Today, he's a fully qualified Green Beret, and he continues to deploy. And I've met Marines like Corporal Adam Shaner. He's an artilleryman who supported operations near Mosul, Iraq, under Sergeant Major Thetford's leadership. I had the privilege of presenting Purple Hearts to Adam and members of his section at the battery position where they were wounded and their section chief was killed in action. After a direct hit by an enemy rocket, Adam and his fellow Marines quickly got the battery back in action because they knew that there were soldiers in Mosul that were counting on them. I've met airmen like Staff Sergeant Dick Hunter. He's an Air Force combat controller who deployed 3 times to combat. Most recently, he was on a combined team of Army and Afghan commandos who were ambushed on patrol. After the ambush, Dick Hunter heroically called in 31 danger close missions to repel the enemy. Some were as close as 10 meters to his position. His actions were responsible for the medical evacuation of 20 soldiers in the exfiltration of his entire Special Forces team. This past October, he was awarded the Air Force Cross. And I've met a lot of sailors, like those aboard the USS Monterey, the most deployed cruiser in the Navy. Several months ago, at the time I visited the Monterey's Carrier Task Force, the sailors had been at sea for 14 of the previous 24 months. And anyone who's ever been in the Navy knows what you're doing in the period of time between deployments. They were supporting the ISIS fight and maintaining freedom of navigation in the Gulf region. And despite an exhausting schedule, the sailors were spirited, they were focused, and they were committed. These are just a few of the many men and women across the Joint Force who are providing a wide range of missions. From a watch floor in Colorado, keeping an eye on our airspace, to enhancing interoperability with our allies in Poland, to conducting counterterrorism operations against ISIS in Iraq, Syria, and Africa, and to standing the watch in Korea. To use a Marine Corps expression, your soldiers, your sailors, your airmen, your Marines, and your Coast Guardsmen are literally in every climb and place. In fact, as we gather here this morning, more than 300,000 Americans are deployed or forward stationed in 177 different countries. Many of them are in harm's way, and I'd ask you to keep them and their families in your thoughts and prayers. And it's because of what they are doing, and it's because of the quality in men and women that we are retaining and recruiting today, that I'm able to deliver the most important message I have for you this morning. I can stand here as your chairman and say with absolute confidence that today's armed forces can defend the United States and our way of life. I can say with absolute confidence that today's force can meet all of our alliance commitments around the world. And I can say with absolute confidence that the United States military has a competitive advantage over any potential adversary. It's important that our allies and enemies understand that, and it's important that the American people understand that. You have a force that you can and you should be proud of. You know, Commander-in-Chief Harmon alluded to it in his introduction. This fall will be the 17th anniversary since the beginning of Operation Enduring Freedom in Afghanistan. And since 9/11, we've asked an awful lot of our men and women in uniform. And to be honest, if you'd asked me in 2001 or 2002, could an all-volunteer force maintain commitment over that period of time? Could they maintain focus? Would we still be recruiting and retaining high-quality people in 2018? Would our families be able to endure that sacrifice? I think I would have said back then, you know what, I'm not sure. But today, if you go around and you talk to a soldier, a sailor, a Marine, an airman, a Coast Guardsman, you'll get a sense right away that we underestimated this generation. Today, they are still focused, they are still committed, and the families are still enduring extraordinary sacrifice. When times are hard, just like their predecessors, just like those of you in this room, when times are hard, today's warriors simply tighten their chin straps and drive on. They don't focus on strategy or policy, they just focus on taking care of their buddies and winning. And I don't think that's a coincidence. First, they're incredibly well led. They're well trained, and thanks to the President, to the Congress, they have the resources necessary to do the job. But there's another very important factor behind the motivation of today's force. The men and women in uniform today, they don't have to look over their shoulder to check their 6 o'clock. They can focus on the mission because they know that their service is recognized and appreciated. They know that what they're doing is important. They also have confidence in knowing that if something happens to them in service, someone will be there to take care of their families. They know that when it's time to transition to civilian life, there'll be someone to help them at that point as well. And while we can always do better, no generation has deployed or returned home with greater support. And much of that credit goes to those of you in this room. No organization does more for our veterans than the veterans of foreign wars. No organization does more to ensure that our veterans are respected for their service. And no organization does more to ensure that our veterans and their families are recognized for the sacrifices on behalf of our nation. Since 1899, the VFW has led the way in advocating for veterans. When a recently separated veteran needs assistance in finding a job or transitioning back to civilian life, the VFW is there. When a wounded serviceman or woman requires help with prosthetics or assistance in cutting through bureaucratic red tape, the VFW is there. And when it's time for TAPS, the VFW is there too. Ladies and gentlemen, let me close by making a commitment to you. As long as the VFW is there, men and women like Command Sergeant Major Thetford, Sergeant First Class Marrera, Corporal Shaner, and Staff Sergeant Hunter will continue to do what they are doing. And as long as they keep doing what they're doing, we'll continue to be the land of the free and the home of the brave. Again, it's truly an honor to be with you this morning, and on behalf of the men and women of the Joint Force, thank you for recognizing us with the 2018 Eisenhower Award, and more importantly, thanks for all you do. God bless you, and Semper Fidelis.